Hi, and welcome to Pro Sessions. This is a collaboration between the Recording Academy and Berklee College's Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship. My name is Nicole Davies. I'm the managing director of Berklee ICE, or the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship. The Institute exists to infuse the startup mindset across the Berklee community of artists. And we launched Pro Sessions with the Recording Academy as a series of informative sessions that help provide music creators with practical insights and tools on how to unlock new opportunities, leverage platforms, and help drive sustainable revenue in this new digital economy. We are going to get started in just a minute. We have a great lineup of guests. Today's topic is on driving revenue through digital education, exploring the mindset between becoming an educator, from thinking of yourself as an artist, exploring new platforms, and learning how to create your brand online. Just a quick disclaimer that nothing within this program should be construed as legal or financial advice. And as you're watching, we welcome those of you to use the Facebook comments or YouTube chat to ask questions throughout the program, and we'll do our best to answer them. So let's get started. I am thrilled to introduce our first two guests. They are co-founders of a company that just yesterday went through a rebranding from Live Lesson Masters to Lively. I discovered them when I was looking into the different artist-focused educational platforms out there. I really admired what they were doing, and so I reached out. So let's welcome in Alicia Carlin and Mark Brownstein. Welcome. Alicia is co-founder and CEO of Lively. She's a seasoned music industry exec, also currently serving as VP of Global Touring and Talent at AEG Presents, and is also one of the producers of Electric Forest Festival. So welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Mark is one of the founding members of the Disco Biscuits, Sirius XM DJ, and also the co-founder of headcount.org, nice, reppin', and is a co-founder of Live Lesson Masters, which is now Lively. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I was so appreciative that you both got back to me so quickly and were, excited to talk to us about this platform that you built. I did not realize that it literally sort of came into existence because of that moment in the pandemic. Mark, your tour was slated to start March 12th, is that right?
Correct.
It's a great date to kick off a tour. But I love the way that you thought about it. So would you two be able to talk a little bit about what was it like in that moment, and how did you come up with the idea of this platform that you built? And then let's talk about what it is.
Great. Tour for the Disco Biscuits on March 12th. This was going to be our first national tour in about 8 years. And the excitement around it leading up to it was like, nothing like we had experienced in our scene in nearly a decade. And we're coming up into this tour, and in the weeks leading up to it, I kind of got tipped off that maybe we were going to have to cancel the tour from a friend of a friend who works for the government, and basically started thinking to myself, well, what's going to happen here if we have to go into quarantine? And so I started to prepare in advance. And if you remember, the week of March 12th, that was really the first week where COVID was on the national
Yeah,
news.
exactly.
That's when everybody found out what was happening. Things were just starting to shut down. The NBA shut down. And we came into our first night of tour, and everybody was there. We were all set up, and we were about to go on sound check, and all four members of the band came in backstage, and we looked at each other and said, this doesn't feel right. We don't want to put our fans at risk here. And we canceled that night. Decided to go and salvage the weekend. We went into the studio, and then Sunday morning I came home and I woke up, and the stark reality of what was about to happen hit me. There wasn't going to be any tour. There wasn't going to be these 3 shows, nor the shows 2 weeks later, or any of the shows across the nation. Everything, the dominoes came crashing down. And I was sat in my bed, really, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do here? I went down to my desk and I looked up at the wall where I have my guitars all hanging up, and I thought, how is this going to go? I mean, I really, as a touring musician, like you rely on the tours, that the bands and musicians have come to rely on touring as really the sole source of revenue in many, many cases for most working musicians across the board. And we were staring at our biggest year in 8 years, and we knew it wasn't going to happen. So I just thought something needs to change right now. And I looked at the guitars and I said, I know how to play bass. Let me go online. I felt a little bit of vulnerability about this next move here, but I thought, what if I reached out to my fans and just offered them a unique experience of teaching bass direct to my fans? And I went on Facebook. I got over that moment of vulnerability. I went on Facebook. I went on Twitter, and I said, would anybody be interested in taking lessons? And I was overwhelmed with the response. I had over 50 responses within like an hour and a half. Woke up the next day, started to make a spreadsheet, and that's when it hit me. The admin portion of giving lessons was going to be more work than actually giving the lessons. And so I started to think, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get through this portion of it? And then the next question I asked myself, so the chairman of the board of Headcount is named Peter Shapiro. He's a concert promoter, lock-in. He owns the Capitol Theater and he owns the Brooklyn Bowl franchise. And whenever we're in meetings and somebody has an idea, he immediately asks the question instantly every time, does that scale? How does it scale? Where does it scale? And his voice literally came into my head and said, does it scale? And I started calling musicians. I first called Robert Walter, who's the organ player from the Grey Boy All-Stars, and said, I have this idea of making a site where me and you and a bunch of our friends can give lessons, and the whole thing would be administrated on a back end. Would you be interested in doing this? He immediately got back to me and was like, I love this idea. Thank you so much for thinking of me. And I chose Robert Walter because he's like a musician's musician. Musicians love him.
Right, yeah.
Like if I went to everybody else with a yes from Robert Walter, it would make it easier to get a community of people together. When we started Headcount, it was the same process. It was calling musicians in my network, bringing them together, putting them on a platform, and kind of leveraging the networks and the fans that they had for positive change in the case of Headcount. So I went through a very similar process, called a couple of musicians. When I saw that, I immediately realized something that I didn't know was going to be the case. Mid-level musicians that can play Red Rocks, couple of nights, and play big tours, 2,000 to 3,000 people on average, like the Disco Biscuits or Humphreys McGee, Sound Tribe, Sector 9, the bands that we started this platform with. Right away, the answer from every single one of those musicians was, yes, I would love to join your platform. And I realized everybody was kind of thinking the same way at that moment, like, we're going to need to work somehow. Everybody's got families and houses and payments and, whatever it is. And so I called Alicia on Wednesday night of that week. This all started on Monday. On Wednesday night, I called Alicia and told her that I had this idea. And she said, call me in the morning early. I called her at 9 a.m. on Thursday. And that's when we got working. We came up with the name, the URL. We knew it was a placeholder. We called it Live Lesson Masters. And Alicia said to me, the goal here is that we're going to be up and running and bringing in revenue for artists by Monday. We wanted to beat the first of the month. The first of the month was now about
you got to pay
12
rent,
days away. And
bills are due.
We knew that people had just had their whole month blown out. Yeah. And we wanted to just give our friends, our musician friends, an opportunity to earn a little money before that day hit. And so we got working, and And we had 5 days to do it. And Alicia said, I'm going to start building the website. You build the roster. And the goal is Monday. And I mean, I'd love to hear Alicia's take on what that experience was like over those next 5 days, where we basically got onto Zoom and put a business from idea to revenue together in 5 days.
I mean, I love it. And I love that this is something built for artists. I mean, I think there's a lot of, there's a ton of online education platforms out there. And I think it's important for our audience to know that there's a lot of places, obviously, that you can go. The reason why I was drawn to you all is that, you know, you're artist focused. And I think that you built this as musicians and as people who love music. And so, Alicia, talk to us a little bit about how does it work? I saw that you continue to add artists in. The instrumentalist with the Avett Brothers just came on, which is super cool. So talk to me a little bit about the platform itself. What is it? How does it work? Yeah.
Sure. So when Mark and I started 5 months ago, Live Lesson Masters, we launched, and then yesterday we relaunched our version 2 called Lively. But essentially, you know, the basics are the same. The technology is a lot better because we have an incredible tech co-founder now. But when I built it, we started the first week with lessons, and then we quickly realized there was a lot more to offer outside of lessons, that a lot of these musicians, some of them had never given lessons before, and they were like, okay, well, can I do like a hang with my fans? So we created something called a chill. That was just like a mini meet and greet, and small group, groups of friends could do them. 10 people could meet with Mark, 10 Disco Biscuits fans. Not everybody plays an instrument or wants to take a lesson, but we really quickly realized after we launched that it was more about fan engagement, interesting, unique fan engagements on any level, whether it's a lesson, a meet and greet, a chill, a private show, a small hard ticketed show, that we really could do any of those things. So how it works is, Mark really went to work kind of within our network, which I think is a fundamental difference of what we're doing, because we've all known each other for a really long time. Mark as a musician and me as a promoter who used to be an agent and a manager, in this grassroots scene where a lot of innovation has always, developed out of the jam rock music scene over the years. And everybody, is a really strong community with a lot of trust and friendship, and getting those people kind of just started rolling one after the other, joining. They all had to be, really vulnerable at first. And Mark, I super commend him for taking that initial leap and going out and getting, 25 people. And now we have over 200 on the platform. And we've expanded into other verticals: studio producing, DJ production, DJ lessons, fitness, and cooking. And we have a lot of others to come. But really, it is at the core, it's a vetted group of people who have, an engaged fan base of some sort, coming on to interact with their fans in a way that has never been really available because it's never been necessary before.
Right. And so talk to me a little bit about sort of that piece. I guess I have two questions. One, who are there, areas where you're looking to recruit more artists and more folks onto the platform? And then for people, obviously, that would like to get on, how would you do that? And then my understanding is that you use Zoom, right? So you're not obviously doing like the streaming part. You didn't build a full sort of like digital interface on that piece, right?
We actually have, and that's what's coming with Lively, is we do have our own interface. However, the lessons on Live Lesson Masters were on Zoom. We're still on Zoom as we transition onto our new Lively platform. But at first, for accessibility and ease of use, we were using Zoom, and we have Lively is a multi-venue model. So lessons look different than a streaming show. And all kinds of different venues that we're going to be releasing through the end of the year on our own platform. And also people can request an invite to be a creator on Lively by going to golive.ly/invite. And that's where, and yes, we are recruiting. We are looking for creators. We're looking for musicians. and actively out there recruiting people to join.
And so, once somebody applies, how do they get vetted? I think that the piece of like engagement is so important. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, it's, direct to consumer seems to kind of just be the way of all of the industries more and more. So, how do you vet people? And then once an artist is in, how does the model work?
Sure. So we have a team now of about 10 people. A lot of the people who are on our team are music industry professionals. We have tour managers who are handling our onboarding, people who are kind of used to interfacing with artists. We have people who are on the road as guitar techs and musicians doing our sound checks and tech setups and vetting people, helping people set up their OBS system and getting everything that they need for their particular setup, different interfaces, different microphones, set up and optimized before they give their first lesson or experience or show or private party. And so, yeah, I mean, our vetting process is kind of, it's internal right now. We're figuring out who makes sense. You need to have a fan base. You need to have an engaged social media platform where you are going to be promoting because, this is a promotion. You have to put in the work to get people. But once you get, a core group of people, like Mark has given over, I believe, over 250 lessons since we launched personally. And now he has a great recurring fan base of people who are taking a 12-week intensive with him. And he's got, I think, 10 people who are going to do a 12-week intensive. So once you build that kind of initial round, you'll have a nice pool of people to go to give lessons or do meet and greets. And then that does translate into groups of friends. And Mark's been doing DJ Brownie private shows for people's, backyards, and people are getting super creative with their setups and able to connect with their friends all over, the country and the world. And as people have been able to have smaller groups of people over to their own houses or backyards and set up like projection screens and have, little parties, and then also be able to invite their friends from other places to watch virtually, the private party aspect has become a really interesting piece as well.
And so for the lessons and the classes specifically, sort of on the education piece of things, how do artists, Mark, you mentioned just like that vulnerability at first of like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. Like, hey, anyone want a class? How do you start thinking about, that financial model and, how much you charge, what the structure looks like, how long the class is, like all of those like nitty gritty basics, and then how the platform, works specifically as far as revenues for artists. How do artists think about that? And do you help, do you have suggestions on, pricing, class length, amount of sessions, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the most important things to us was this started out of COVID. So when we started the business, there was a sense of goodwill in it. The point of it was to be artist friendly. So we wanted to come in and start out with a deal that was going to be great for the artists. And we also wanted to keep the prices of the lessons fan friendly. So the model started out in March where everything was super accessible for fans and super accessible for the artists. And that's really what the, kind of the ethos of the company is we want to be a great customer. We want to have great customer service for the fans, and we want to be a great partner for the artists, be there and hold their hands every step of the way. And part of that is pricing, and making sure that you're pricing it fair and accessible so that it's not too much of a kind of a VIP experience. And it was especially important in the first half of, quarantine, where really we're suffering through a national tragedy.
Yeah, everyone was struggling.
Almost everybody has PTSD at that point, whether they know it or not. It's a national trauma. Everybody's suffering from it together, whether they kind of know how to identify that. And so for people who are used to going out to concerts as their release in the first place, as their escape, being able to come on and interface with the artists and continue that engagement, it was so important for both the fans, and I could talk as a creator, so important for me not to be just stuck in my house without any way to continue to feel engaged, other than putting out old archival footage, and what I found giving lessons, I had never given a lesson. Alicia says I've given over 200 lessons and done almost 200 meet and greets and about 20 DJ shows from my streaming, my streaming platform on OBS as well. And what I found is I have learned more in the time that I've given those 200 lessons than probably that I had learned on the base in the last 2 or 3 years combined. In 2 or 3 months, it's for me, teaching is about learning.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the really beautiful thing about it. That's kind of something that we've been talking to the artists about, is there's this whole other thing that, we're talking about the pricing, but there's this whole other thing, which is it's so rewarding and engaging and has really been a life raft for a lot of artists financially and emotionally at the same time, and I know for me that's true. Alicia is the queen of setting the price in the right place.
How does the platform decide the price? Do artists do that? And then what is the revenue share, with obviously the artist and Lively?
Sure. So at first, like Mark was saying, we had things priced pretty low and reasonable, but we also wanted to let people know this was available. And so our basic pricing is anywhere between $50 and $200 for 30 to 60 minutes. And that really depends on the artist and supply and demand, right? Some people only have a few hours a week and some people want to fill a lot more time. So if you want to fill a lot more time, we kind of just help you navigate how many hours you're looking to do, what we think the right price is, and also then monitoring it with them over the first month and doing check-ins and marketing check-ins to see how they're booking and just how things are going. And then we adjust the price. That's the great thing. We can be flexible, and we're only 5 months in, and everybody, including all the fans, have been really great at knowing that we're all in this together. We're all learning things together. And we've been able to inch up some of the prices a little bit for the higher, grossing musicians, because they've decided, hey, maybe at the first month I was going to do anything it took. I didn't know what the future looked like. I'm going to give a lot of lessons, so I'm going to do them at a lower price point. And now people are kind of honing in a little bit, maybe a little bit less hours, a little bit more on the price. And our split is 80-20, 80% to the artist. And we feel like, that's a lot, a really good artist friendly number based around the other platforms, and also kind of the service that we are really trying to deep dive with all the artists on their marketing and really hand holding and being a high touch service.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. I have a couple of questions from our audience members. One of them is around the tech. So, obviously different people have different sort of tech comfort, and also just different setups at home. And I will mention that Zoom has made some tweaks very recently. They've made an upgrade. And so I'll mention this a little bit later in the outro, but there are some new settings that you can do within Zoom. So everybody should be aware of that. We will share some links later on as well for sort of how you can do that and how you can adjust. So I think that that's been really great for anybody who's doing just a one-on-one student teacher class. But, for those of, your network that were less tech savvy, both on what they were going to need to set up. Mark, you mentioned you had a green screen situation, which obviously is awesome. Not everybody can do that.
Mark built that with
everybody
paper.
Everybody can do that. Everybody can get a green screen. There was a green screen shortage worldwide at the point where I went to get my green screen, and I literally drove to every Rite Aid in Philadelphia to get one piece of lime green construction paper that was left in each store. They were hoarding them. I drove all over Philly. In early April, I felt like I was risking my life to get this green screen.
DIY.
Yeah,
do it yourself.
Yeah,
I
was going to say I saw a couple of artists doing their streaming from their living room, and you'd see the couch, and then the cat would walk by, and then I saw a couple of streams where I was like, "Whoa, that looked like they were in a spaceship, like with an LED screen behind them." And I made a couple of calls. I called my friends in Big Gigantic, an EDM act, and and said, what's going on there? And they kind of were like, yeah, you're going to have to go to Rite Aid, but you can build a green screen out of cardboard at this point. And then I sat and did like a Streamlabs OPS self tutorial on YouTube it took me about 10 days to get it dialed in. 2 computers, my tractor set up, and an interface. So with a tractor, an interface, and 2 computers and OBS, and just facing the camera at me and the screen. It looks pretty amazing.
But also, not everybody has anything remotely like that. A lot of people don't have that and don't need that for the kind of lessons they're teaching. A lot of people we're just setting them up with our tech team. We're helping them if they want recommendations with like just USB microphones, some really basic stuff that's like under $100 to get set up and have a really nice sounding setup. We go through all of their settings. We have best practices settings depending on what kind of interface you're using or not. Everyone has a different setup, and I think that's really the crux of it. And we just have some people on our team who've gotten really proficient in understanding the different types of technologies that are out there and the different needs of different musicians and the different technology comfort levels. We've had people who'd never used any sort of teleconferencing giving lessons. Incredible awesome. Musicians, and we've just helped them get comfortable, and then we also do the same things for the fans with some best practices and tutorials on how to set up their settings for the best sound quality.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. If you would stay on, we're gonna bring a few other people in, but Alicia, it was awesome to get to speak with you. Congrats. I hope you get some sleep after that transition to your new platform, and
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye. So I'd like to now welcome a few more guests. We're going to speak with some artists who have made that pivot to education at different points in their career. So first up, I'd like to bring in one of our MVPs of Pro Sessions, Sav Beist, and her bandmate, Katie Larson of The Accidentals. Welcome. Hey. And it should be mentioned that Sav has also put together an amazing manual on OBS. So Mark was just talking about that. If you are looking on how to do the OBS thing, it's on the Pro Sessions page, and I'm sure we'll share it again. So great job on that. Cool, and thanks. Then we have 2 awesome Berklee alumni. Tanisha Hall is the founder and lead of the Whitehall Academy, which is a performing arts academy in South LA. Hey, Tanisha. They've had students go on to American Idol, The Voice, America's Got Talent, and had to pivot online. So we're going to talk about that experience. And then Adam Neely has a presence on YouTube. He's also a Berklee alum and studied jazz comp at Berklee, bassist, composer, and with an engaged subscriber base of over 1 million people. So we're going to talk about how you think about yourself as this sort of level of a brand. And then last but not least, let's bring in Rick Vieto, another YouTuber, producer, jazz guitarist, songwriter, arranger, and teacher. And I understand that you know Adam pretty well. So,
what's up, man? How's it going?
What's up? How are you, Adam?
Welcome, everyone. So, Mark, you talked a little bit about that transition that you had to make on whatever it was, March 12th, March 13th. And Tanisha and Sav, it sounds like, you both also sort of had these experiences, obviously, as educators. Sav and Katie, you are both really passionate about orchestral education. Obviously, that's sort of where you came out of. And so I guess I'm curious, Sav, Katie, Tanisha, when you went from that in-person model that you were really familiar with and that you had been doing for some time, both of you in different ways, but I think that from what I understand, you had great relationships with students. How did you sort of think about making that transition online and starting to think about like, okay, we're going to do this differently now?
Tanisha, you want to take this first?
Sure, I can. Cool. We were all taken off guard. We really
and it was really for us the group lessons, because I personally have been teaching online lessons for about 7-8 years to clients who were on tour or traveled out of the country. So I started teaching on Skype and FaceTime. So it was something that I was already doing individually, but we started our winter session of our community program, and then after the first week it was like nobody can come in the studio, blah blah blah. I was like, what do we do? So I had some parents that I talked to, and I was like, tell me what to do. And they said, well, maybe you can go online, school's online. So we looked into it, and we got some iPads, and to set up so the teachers can be able to broadcast. And we offered for students who did not, because a lot of our kids in our community programs did not have instruments at home. So what we did is we donated them instruments to take home with them so that they're able to get that experience. So it was really just kind of figuring out, like, how are we going to teach 20 kids that are usually in a classroom together on music? It's one thing teaching them math or social studies, but how are we going to teach them piano? And I have to really give it up to my instructors and just kind of, and our parents and that community and the kids just kind of rolling with it and experimenting, because I had parents saying, hey, it's not safe to be in person, but my kids really love their class. And our biggest thing in wanting to continue was really just focusing on the mental health aspect, because this is a time that no one's experienced before, and we didn't want them to be taken from everything else, and this is another thing taken from them. So they were so excited to still be able to see their teacher and to see their friends and to continue with their music classes. And the best thing is, because they had all this extra time to practice, they got better.
Oh, it's amazing. It's an unexpected outcome.
It's an unexpected outcome. So at first, when we even donating the instruments, our first thing was just like renting the instruments and lending the instruments. But I was like, well, I mean, why take them back if the kids are actually practicing and they're doing good? So keep it. I can get another keyboard, And so that's basically what we did. And with our private lessons, it was the same thing. For some that we utilize on Zoom, some we do FaceTime, depending on the instrument. Like the Lively program that they just started. Congratulations. That's super awesome. I was one of the initial instructors on a platform called takelessons.com, like started about 10 years ago. And it's kind of the same thing. And so they have their own platform. And so now through our what is it called? CRM or whatever. Our we use Mind Body Online. So now they have embedded in their system that we can do our live classes through that, through a live stream through Mind Body. So for this fall session, we're going to experiment with that for the first time, because it'll send out an individual link for each class, which will, cut down on any confusion, because, instead of kids logging into the guitar class instead of piano. So but it's been really great, and the most exciting part is we're a small, we have about 200 or 300 people that come to us weekly here in South LA. But now that we are online, we've had students that moved away. They're able to come back to class. So now we have students from all over the United States that are able to participate in our program, which is, the community group is $35 a month, and you can take unlimited classes on Saturdays. So you can
interesting. So you sort of built this almost like an access pass.
Exactly. So we've been doing that at our studio, but that only gives us access to people within like a 10-20 mile radius of Los Angeles. But now we have students in North Carolina and Philadelphia, and
there's no borders really
anymore. There's no
anymore.
borders anymore. So that was the biggest thing for us, and we did it out of necessity. But now it's like, wow, this actually might work to continue it this way.
Well, I think that sort of, again, direct to consumer. You were already close to your customer, but I think building off that is so interesting. Please forgive the noise that might be coming through the walls. I have a couple of budding artists myself that are very just excited about life. So sorry about that background noise. So Sav and Katie, talk to me a little bit about your model. I think that, and one thing, Tanisha, I want to make sure that we share that resource, the CRM. We'll make sure that we get that information from you, because I think that our audience members might be interested. So we'll make sure to post that later on. Sav and Katie, talk to me about sort of the involvement that you had with the orchestra program, And then I think what's really interesting to me is sort of how you think about making those lessons engaging, because it can be hard. It can be hard doing the Zoom thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, just want to first introduce ourselves. Katie and Sav, we play in the Accidentals. We are also co-founders of Play It Forward nonprofit, and we can really admire what Tanisha you're doing because we're really passionate about getting instruments into kids' hands. So we created this nonprofit specifically to do that and to provide lessons and also to have follow-up from musicians that might serve as role models for any kid that wants to become like a drummer one day, or like, I want to play mandolin. Okay, we'll get like, I don't know, Chris Thiele to like come talk to you. So that kind of stuff is what that's for. We also have an educational website, theaccidentaledu.com. And we did that in partnership with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to provide free sheet music, tablature, and scores, as well as workshops and concerts to students in schools all across the United States. So that's kind of a little bit of what we do. Katie can talk about how we ended up in our attic in northern Michigan.
Welcome. The last 6 years we've been touring like 200 shows a year, and part of that is playing shows and recording and teaching, and we totally relate to Mark because we had huge plans for March. We were set to release a single that we recorded with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra, and followed by 15 dates of youth orchestra workshops and concerts. And so quickly we also realized we've got to like change these to be online workshops and online concerts.
Yeah. So what you mentioned earlier, Nicole, is that I'd written this tutorial on OBS, and that is actually what we used. We did an OBS to Crowdcast integration, and the reason we chose Crowdcast as our platform because you can bypass that paywall, you can password protect it, and it's email based. So we would just get an email list of classroom emails from the school, and we would use that to send out the link for everybody to join it. So that's how we did that. And as far as engagement, which was, your question, like, how do you keep kids engaged when it's like, basically you're talking to a screen, we teach anything from like songwriting to alternative strings to music business classes. So we typically have the students come prepared with whatever tools they might need for that specific lesson. And we tend to ask like a lot of questions like, hey, where are you guys from? Like, what instruments do you play? What instruments do you want to play? Like, what's your favorite genre of music? And then while they are answering that question, we'll like play a couple tunes, especially if it's like an alternative styles workshop. But like basically just asking questions and keeping the comments rolling and letting them talk to each other and engage and interact is a big part of being engaged in an online way.
That's so important. And yeah, I mean, I think that seeing engagement go up digitally is really interesting, and like it's challenging, but it's not impossible. So Adam and Rick, you have been doing the online education thing for some time, and I guess I'm curious from your perspectives, how do you engage with your audience, and how did you start to sort of build this brand as educators online?
Well, I guess I'll go first. So just to give a little bit of a background, I've been making YouTube videos for 14 years now. I started in February of 2006, which is very soon after YouTube was actually created. And I've been constantly building in the background little lessons and kind of practicing YouTube. The thing that I always tell musicians is that YouTube is a skill you got to shed. You have to practice this. This is a language, it's a platform into itself. And to approach it as just a content delivery mechanism is kind of not really the point of YouTube. There's a way of getting people engaged with subjects that you might be wanting to talk about. It's its own marketing as well as content delivery system. I've never spent any money on marketing, and YouTube's algorithm is specifically designed to promote certain videos to certain people at certain times, and having an understanding of how you relate to the algorithm and how your algorithm might relate back to your content is a big part of the game. And it's a kind of a steep barrier for entry, and even more so now with everybody who is trying to.
Yeah, it's a hugely flooded market in some ways.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that you have to be in it for the long game, because music in general has always been a flooded market.
Well, and it's the lifeblood of YouTube as well. I mean, it truly is.
For sure, for sure. So, I mean, I only started thinking about it as a career maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I started doing it full-time 3 years ago. And so when COVID hit, basically nothing changed about my business and nothing changed about how this was working. But a lot of people started asking, how do I make the transition from touring, and how do I make the transition from teaching in person to YouTube or to online? And a lot of people were looking at YouTube specifically as a means of basically making money, because they saw YouTube's AdSense, which is basically the money that you make through ads that are placed on YouTube. And there were a lot of people who had misconceptions about it and thought that, hey, if I just get 1,000 subscribers, then I can monetize my videos and then I can make a living. And unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. And the amount of money that you make from a small amount of engagement is not the same as maybe a one-to-one lesson on an online platform. Instead, there's a lot more legwork that you really have to do to build up a brand around your channel and a brand around your identity as an online educator person, I guess, with content creation. So it's been an interesting thing in the past 6 months to see how people are reacting to this new landscape. And I think that digital content creation, whether it's through online teaching platforms or through social media, is really the future of music in a lot of ways. And I think the more that we really embrace it right now and think about how this is going to be, how things are going to be done for at least the next 5 to 10 years, I think the better we set up people for what's necessary.
So Rick and Adam, you have, these videos. There's, let's see, Rick, you have What Makes This Song Great. Adam, the one that's at the top of your channel right now, or near the top, is the worst jazz solo of all time, which I love that. But I think that, one of the things I find interesting about those both is that while your model is not that you're, engaging sort of one-on-one with an individual or a group, you're clearly thinking about sort of like lesson content. And so how do you come up with these ideas? Are they from audience members or, fans, subscribers? How do you think about those, and how do you come up with the topics? And I think it definitely makes music education more interesting when you're looking at a song a new way.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Adam. You go.
All right. So I had a really interesting discussion with Estelle Caswell from Vox Media, and I did a video with her on Giant Steps by John Coltrane, and which actually won an Emmy, which is kind of crazy. And talking to her, she was approaching it from the perspective of a journalist, and I had never really thought of that before. Like, as a musician, am I a journalist when I teach or when I create a lesson or something like that? But the way that she was thinking is, well, when you create the piece of media, you have to tell a story and you have to have a lead or a hook, something that anybody can understand, even if they don't understand the content itself. Anybody can understand what the video is about. And it's not about dumbing down something. It's about clarifying your thought process with basically anything. And so the more I started thinking about what I did as journalism, which is such an alien concept to musicians, the more I started thinking about, okay, well, this is a way that you can really engage a broader public and really bring in a lot of people into potentially really complicated ideas. And I know Rick has a bunch of ridiculously complicated ideas on his channel, and he does it in a very similar way too.
I mean, you break down tons of music theory and these concepts that for me are very foreign, but you make them interesting, Rick. So how do you go about thinking about that?
Well, Adam articulated this so well. The most important thing that I realized about YouTube is that you have to tell stories. I mean, it's not just about delivering concepts that people can understand, because that gets very dry really quickly. And I started out doing a lot of music theory at the beginning of my channel. I've been doing it just over 4 years, and those videos, eventually you kind of run out of things. I wouldn't say you run out of things, but you just get sick of doing similar things. I did a lot of film scoring. I did a lot of improvisation videos. And then I worked as a music producer for 25 years. So I said, okay, I'm going to play multi-tracks and talk about famous songs. And so I made this thing, What Makes a Song Great? And that became became like a series within my channel. And then so those are easy to come up with. You just pick a song and you break it down. But
right.
last week I did a video where I recreated the acoustic sound from Ramble On by Led Zeppelin by buying the same guitar, just from looking at a picture of Jimmy Page playing that he posted on his Instagram. This is the investigative journalism that Adam's talking about. I look at it, I email a friend of mine, what kind of guitar is this? Oh, it's a Vox or an Eco guitar. It's a bolt-on neck. And so I bought that guitar on Reverb, and I got it here, and I had the same microphone that's in the picture, and I recreated the sound. And then video got a lot of views, and people are saying, oh, this is an amazing series. And I thought, series? I'm not going to, but I'm going to do another video tomorrow in this series. So you kind of stumble on these things, as Adam knows, as you go along. You
were interested in it. I mean, it's something that it's that thing of like, if you want to go down to the rabbit hole, other people are going to want to do it too.
Yeah, you have to be passionate about what you do. Adam made a video about his history on YouTube over 14 years, and it's a fantastic video. And it is just so interesting to watch how his channel developed. And I had mentioned it earlier, Adam, before you got on, but the Neely bump, I always tell people this, that Adam really got my channel going right in the beginning when he told people to subscribe to it. And that was a huge thing. It took me about 3 years before I had a day that I got as many subscribers as when Adam told people to come in and subscribe to my channel. He has an incredibly engaged viewership, and because his content is so consistently good. And I think that's the other thing with YouTube. He's right in that it's a very steep barrier to entry. You can't just make one video and have it take off and get a bunch of subscribers. It takes years to learn YouTube. It's like learning an instrument. Like you said, it's a great description of it.
Well, the consistency too. I mean, I think that's such a huge piece, is like, showing up. We have a ton of audience questions, so I want to make sure that we have time for that. So can I ask you, how do you think about the business side? And this, I'll put this out to any of you. Obviously, you've all had to transition in different ways, but how have you adapted and sort of thinking about this side of the business to stay relative, to build the audience? How, Tanisha, Mark, I'm curious, what did that side of things look like?
I can take it if you want. In the beginning, I wasn't as blessed as Mark to start with 50 students right away. I started with like 4 or 5, and we did the billing ourselves, and we're invoicing on Excel and just, managing it. And it became a problem, just keeping track of everything. So I think it was about 4 years ago, MindBody Online, that's the CRM that we use. They used to be mainly for like spas and like karate studios, and a doctor's office that I did accounting for, because I used to do accounting in a past life. They used it, and I was like, this system is great, but it was super expensive. Well, they then scaled their model down, so they've become more affordable. So now it's like under $200 a month. And inside of it, you can do billing, you can do all your customer management, you can do all of that. And it automatically sends out, receipts and payments, and, you can keep track of everything beautifully. And so it's just really great because it's not expensive, and you don't have to, you don't have to build it yourself. Because we used to use like a version of FileMaker for our database, and it was like this twofold system, but they do your processing and everything. And like I said, and now they've added this video component where you can do the live streaming and everything directly through there. So I'd say anybody who has probably more than 50 to 100 students, like it would be worth it, to have. I think we pay, and it depends on like your level, but it's less than $200 a month. And you can do credit card billing and all that. It keeps track of everything. And it's cut down on us having to track down money, which is a big thing when you're teaching lessons, especially if you've had people on recurring lessons and they'll pay a month, and then you go 2-3 lessons. It's like, oh, snap, they didn't pay for those lessons, and I got to go chase that money, so it really cut that out completely. And people can now go, and we've integrated it into our website so that people can go on our website, click on the widget, book their lesson, pay for their lesson, set up their billing, and we don't have to touch it at all. So we've actually made more money because we're not losing so much money by not keeping track of money, which as an independent teacher was one of that uncomfortable thing, like, hey, you got to pay me,
Right.
So it really took that out. So I don't know, Mark, if you want to.
I'd like to add to that. It's funny because I had everything that Tanisha is talking about. These are all of the thoughts that went into my mind when the first spreadsheet hit, and I was like, wow, this is going to be, how am I going to schedule? First of all, how am I going to take payment? Am I going to now be chasing my own fans down for like $100? Hey, you didn't send me that $100 Venmo. All of these thoughts crossed my mind. And of course, the way that I am, and this is just the way that I think, when we wanted to do voter registration in 2004, instead of calling Rock the Vote, we started head count. It's just the way that my friends and I think. I come from a group of friends that have an extremely entrepreneurial spirit. One of the guys in my band started the company Splice, which I know you guys featured on the series. And so when we encounter a problem, we like look around and we're like, oh, they're doing it. And then we, of course, with the musician ego, we immediately think to ourselves, we can do this better than anybody else is doing it. So we were looking for a platform, and all of these thoughts crossed my mind. And I thought to myself, paying a lot of musicians, bringing money in, handling that is similar to running a festival. And how a festival accounting where you have to pay so I went to
you brought in Alicia,
my closest friend that runs a gigantic festival, and now I also run a festival. The Disco Biscuits run a festival,
right.
in Bisco, and I just knew how the system works, and I thought to myself, in terms of getting payment, getting scheduling, having Zoom links or whichever links, or building our own proprietary streaming platform. We can, I was like, I can do this. Called Alicia, and she immediately confirmed. She was like, I can do this. I can build this in a couple of days. This is something that we can just make our own platform. And I would like to add something to what Tanisha said. If you have 50 to 100 students, golive.ly/invite. We can, like Mind Body does, we have all of that capability, the on-site streaming. We can handle that for you, and we'll hold your hand along the way and make you feel really warm and fuzzy about it. And so we built, just like what Tanisha's talking about, we built it out. And then once we built it, we built it on pre-existing code. We're thinking about business. My first thought was, we don't want to get mired in code and have 3 to 4 months go by where we can't get this up and running and working, and it was about getting people,
No, you had to deliver.
So the second we had that set up, then we started to look at the systems that were available through Squarespace and the scheduling company and all of the integrated apps. And we got a real developer. Our developer had just come off of building Nike sneakers app and was available and wanted to get into something in the music world. And so we partnered up with a CTO, technical co-founder, who was able to sit down, and over the last 4 months, the first launch, 4 days, the second launch, 4 months went into really thinking through how to present the brand, how to have a brand that represents what the offerings that we had, that's a brand that matches and just felt good. So that's another way of looking at it for entrepreneurs is, there's a million streaming platforms out there and to go to. And you want to find one that really understands. What I like about what we're doing is that as an artist who's running the business, I really understand what all of these other creators are going through, all of the musical creators are going through on the whole entire way, from the moment they get their confirmation email that tells them that a lesson was booked, to their reminder, to showing up, to walking the student through the Zoom settings. I've done I've gone through this now, and I know that now I can tell there's people who have been teaching this way for years and years and years. And I would like to just add, I'm not out here to take your students. I'm creating my own students. The nice thing about Lively is it's one of the things about our platform that Alicia touched on is the artists really, in order for it to work for the creators, they really do have to have an engaged fan base. And,
Right.
Rick and Adam were talking about an engaged YouTube platform. And this is like working off of musicians that have really hyper engaged live platforms, bands that a lot of people have never heard of, but they go out and they sell 1,000 tickets a night everywhere they go. And that's converting.
Yeah, you've got your following.
Yeah, it's converting well.
And then Sav and Katie, I'm aware of the time. We're going to sign off soon. But I'm curious, how do you connect? How have you been connecting with students? Were they students you were already connected with? And I think just in general, how do you go about, sort of finding new audiences, reaching out to potential students?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So when we were on tour, we were just going to a lot of different high schools, colleges, elementary schools, middle schools, and even just all ages student gathering kind of things. But what we've discovered is that there's kind of a couple different ways that you can build your audience now. If you're just getting started as a musician and you're trying to get work, you're trying to teach to schools or teach to students in general, there's a really great resource. It's the National Association for Music Education. They have a directory of a bunch of conferences and a bunch of contacts, so you can get involved there. That's kind of the DIY way. The other way that we would recommend is to start local. So a lot of the schools that we were planning on touring were Midwest. We live in Michigan, and we do a lot of Midwest tours out to different festivals, and that was the plan. But all of those were able to transition online thanks to the OBS to Crowdcast integration that we did. So reaching out to local schools, contacting principals or art instructors who might be interested in expanding kind of the diversity of online classes. That would be how to introduce that.
If you are lucky enough to have a booking agent, if you're a solo artist or a touring band, we put together a whole one sheet and had a convo with our artist, or our booking agent at Fleming, and just told her, hey, this is what we can do. We can, talk about songwriting or alternative strings. Would you be able to pitch this for us? So
there's also there's also dedicated booking agents who only book workshops. So those are out there as well. Those are available.
So Adam and Rick, one last question. When you were starting out, how did you think of yourselves, and sort of how did you start to think about like, okay, I'm a performer, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and now I'm going to go and sort of like put myself out there online. I mean, I think that vulnerable moment, it's the same, right? It's the same as starting a school of texting or tweeting out to your friends. How did you first start to think about like, okay, this is my career and this is now what I'm doing?
Well, for me, I had an intern named Rhett Shull, who has a YouTube channel now, who just came in one day. He was interning in my recording studio and said, you should start a YouTube channel. And I said, oh, okay. I don't know the camera. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. So he said, I'll teach you, which he brought his camera in the next day and helped me make my channel trailer, which actually is still my channel trailer. And
oh, that's awesome.
I started making videos with my iPhone at night after my sessions were done. I made 340 videos in the first year, but wow. I would just shoot them, at 9 o'clock at night. And when my kids went to bed, and I'd put them up in the morning, mistakes and all. And that's how I started.
I love that.
And I didn't think, oh, this is going to be a career or anything like that. I just did it for fun, essentially, at first.
You put yourself out there. Adam, last parting words?
Oh, no, thanks for having us. This is great. I mean, I think the big thing for anybody who's doing social media specifically for education is to think of it as something that's you need to be in it for the long haul, because the way of monetizing social media is crowdfunded Patreon, merchandise, selling a book and selling courses. I know Rick does that. Occasionally getting sponsors. That's something that I do. But it's all things that are built upon having a brand and having a deep connection already with an audience. And you can't sell that in the beginning. You have to go and actually make an audience and have that kind of interaction and get people really excited about what it is that you bring. So if you do the social media route, start with it not with the monetization strategy in mind, because otherwise it's not going to work out. In other words, you got to do it for the love of it, kind of like music. So,
well, thank you so much, Tanisha, Mark, Sav, Katie, Adam, and Rick. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing with our members and followers. I'm going to now bring in Lisa, Lisa Ferris of the Recording Academy.
Thanks,
Hi,
you
Lisa.
guys. I have to say, we got some really wise words from Rick and Adam. Thank you, Tanisha, Alicia, Mark, and of course, always Sav and Katie for joining us on a few of these. There seems to be so many different ways to make money doing lessons. I think.
Yeah, and there's no wrong way. I mean, I think that's, if nothing else, what we just saw. I also want to just give a couple resources. We are going to share these out. There's a couple of documents on Berkeley Online. So that's a massive place. You can, of course, take lots of continuing ed classes. We have some stuff on creative entrepreneurship, but there's a couple of free resources. So recently, Erin Barra, who's an amazing faculty member on Berkeley Online, published 10 ways to make online teaching engaging. And that's a resource that we'll share. And then there's a bunch of free sample lesson plans and other free music course resources also on Berkeley Online. And then we're also going to post a link on the recent Zoom update for professional music mode. So yeah, Lisa, it's, there's no wrong way to do it. I think it's just a question, like Adam said, like you just put yourself out there, make those 340 videos, make something 9 at night. It's not going to be perfect, but put it out there and start making those connections. And little by little, you're gonna build a following.
And I think the resources that you just gave are great, because particularly with teaching, I think sometimes, although people are passionate about it, if they haven't done it before, they're not really quite sure where to start. And so being able to determine whether they're going to be giving, online one-on-one classes or doing videos because they have a really great concept and putting them out there for people to see, it's really two different approaches. But I think we got some great tips from this group today.
Yeah. Well, we have another one coming up in September. So that one's
9/17, VIP events, alternative venues, and private concerts. It's funny, when we first planned that one, it felt like it was so far away, and everyone would be ready and able to do really small venue concerts. But we'll see where we're at. We don't know where we're going to be at by September at this point.
We'll discuss drive-in concerts and different little things that people are trying out, and then we're going to do another one after that on royalties, neighboring rights, tracking down payments, which I think is going to be important for everyone.
Yep. So on 10/8, we'll have finding hidden revenue. So we're excited about that one. I think we have a special guest for that we just heard about today. So Tune in, everyone, for more information or to leave your email to get updates on Pro Sessions. Visit grammy.com/Pro Sessions. And Nicole, thank you again for being such a great partner with Berkeley Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship. We love working with you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.